Breaking news, jurors have reached a verdict in a trial of the Colorado theater shooter James Holmes, and the jury has found Holmes guilty of first-degree murder. We're being told that the entire verdict may take up to 90 minutes for the judge to go through it all. We will bring you all those details as they come in, but I want to go to you, Heather. Why was this such a mystery? It seemed to almost anyone that, of course, he was guilty of first-degree murder.
Listen, Charles, in Colorado, the law is very different. The prosecution has the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt to prove that he was insane. That's a difficult thing, especially in these circumstances where you've got these notebooks that have pages and pages of rambling and all kinds of things that anyone reading them would say this is insanity. But there was a lot of expert testimony.
When I yell in my office, they think I'm mentally insane,
well,
you know?
But look at this photo.
That's how I
Look at this
defend you,
photo.
bro.
No, really, guys, look at the photo we have of him up there. I mean, in other words,
here's the thing.
How do you distinguish that? Because the average American would say this guy was crazy. He was nuts.
The distinction, real simple, Charles, is that even though you're mentally ill, that does not equate to legal insanity.
Right. What's the distinction?
Now, hold on. Remember, two prosecution experts said he was not insane. Two defense psychiatrists said he was insane. So the point is, how do you differentiate that? At the end of the day, one law professor said, and she's a bit of an expert in this area, she said the horrific nature of this crime, like in Boston with Tsarnaev, makes it virtually impossible to do anything but find him guilty. And also, by the way, if he said to the police, take me, right? Then he knows he did something wrong.
And also, he wired the apartment up to blow up with the cops coming to his apartment. How insane was he? And I think that came into being, well, if you were that crazy, how did you think about wiring that apartment?
They have to know the difference.
Not to interrupt you,
so hold one second. So the defense wanted him to be proven guilty because it would have been a lot easier sentence or something?
They wanted him to be, well, if he was insane, then he goes to a mental hospital the rest of his life and doesn't go to, now he faces the death penalty.
So you guys think
he's facing the death penalty.
So he did the thing with the hair and all of this stuff. Maybe it's just understanding that even pre-knowing that this would be my trial.
Exactly
maybe I
right.
use this.
But if you go back to, as Bo says, some of the planning, okay, and then, again, not to be a broken record, this thing about seeing the police and submitting to them, an insane person who doesn't know what they did is wrong sees a cop, they're like, hi, how are you?
Well, and that's
not
what it
take
is.
me away.
It comes down to do they know the difference between right and wrong?
That's
You
right.
can be crazy, but if you know the difference between right and wrong, and here we've got a guy who's, like you said, locking up his apartment, that makes the difference.
It sounds open as shut. Why is it going to take 90 minutes for the judge to read
Well, there's
all this
26 counts, apparently, so they're just going to painstakingly go through them.
Every count they go through.
Also, there's two theories of first-degree murder for each count, apparently. One is premeditation, the other is a reckless disregard. Doesn't really matter that much. Same situation. But there'll be a separate death penalty hearing, Charles.
Yeah, and that's going to be, his mental status is going to come into play there. Colorado is not real hip on putting people to death, and so now they're going to have to consider whether or not they think that he.
So you could be found guilty, not of insanity, but the sentencing phase could actually find you guilty of insanity.
No. Now he's been adjudicated guilty. Forget insanity. We go to a penalty hearing where the only two options, Charles, life in prison, death penalty.
But his mental status will come in as a mitigating factor.
Right.
People, in general, you take polls, they don't like to put people they believe
But Charles's question, if I may, is it's not going to undo the verdict of guilty.
No, not undo the verdict. I was just curious.
Yeah.
They already said it was not, the insanity had nothing to do with this. Then why consider it again when it comes down to the sentencing phase?
It can be a mitigating factor.
It's a mitigating factor. People do not like to put people, in general, when you take polls, put people who are insane or have mental illnesses to death. And so that's going to be a big issue.
Well, we ran into this with the Boston murder.
I was just going to say.
Because you had some families of the victims who just didn't want to relive this through all of the process.
I think we talked about it. The Boston Globe came out with two editorials against the death penalty. Shockingly, one of them was based on the facts of the case, not a generic opposition to the death penalty. They said since the brother was so much more involved, that was crazy. Nevertheless, you saw the death penalty. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'll tell you right now, I think this.
And what about a trial for everyone else that was, shot, injured during this?
They're all covered in this. That's another reason.
That's one of the reasons why it's going to take so long.
Yeah.
All right. Once again, James Holmes found guilty